Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Exploring Nonviolent Communication. Today, we're diving into Chapter 3 of Marshall Rosenberg's book, Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life. This chapter is titled Observing Without Evaluating. Alex, this chapter really delves into how crucial it is to distinguish our observations from our evaluations. What were your initial thoughts?
Hi, Darowan. This chapter is so fundamental to the practice of NVC. Rosenberg starts by emphasizing the importance of clearly observing what we see, hear, or touch without mixing in any evaluation. It's about separating what actually happens from how we interpret it. This idea is so simple, yet transformative. What stood out to you?
I was struck by how Rosenberg describes the consequences of mixing observation with evaluation. He explains that when we do this, others are likely to hear criticism and thus resist what we are saying. It's an immediate barrier to effective communication. He uses the example of a teacher calling a student lazy versus saying they observed the student not completing their homework. The former is an evaluation, while the latter is a clear observation.
That's a great example. It highlights how evaluations can be seen as judgments, which can cause defensiveness. Rosenberg shares a poetic piece that illustrates this beautifully. He writes, "Tell me that you're disappointed with the unfinished chores you see, but calling me irresponsible is no way to motivate me." This perfectly encapsulates the difference between an observation and an evaluation.
Yes, and it's such a relatable scenario. Rosenberg also mentions how static language can create problems. Our language often tries to capture a constantly changing reality with fixed terms, which can lead to misunderstandings. He advocates for process language that reflects the ongoing nature of life. For instance, instead of labeling someone as lazy, we should describe the specific behaviors we observe.
Absolutely. Rosenberg uses the example of someone saying, "You're the most arrogant speaker we've ever had," during one of his workshops. Instead of reacting defensively, he explores the underlying observation. He asks if the person is reacting to him speaking for 30 minutes straight without giving the audience a chance to participate. This approach transforms a potentially confrontational situation into an opportunity for understanding.
It's a powerful technique. By focusing on specific behaviors rather than making broad generalizations, we open the door to more constructive dialogue. Rosenberg also emphasizes the importance of context. Observations should be specific to time and place. For example, saying Hank Smith has not scored a goal in 20 games is more helpful than labeling him as a poor soccer player.
That specificity is crucial. It helps in avoiding misunderstandings and allows for clearer communication. Rosenberg also provides exercises to practice distinguishing between observations and evaluations. One of the exercises involves identifying whether statements are purely observational or if they contain evaluations. It's a practical way to hone this skill.
That's a great point. Practicing this distinction can be incredibly helpful in everyday interactions. For example, instead of saying, "You never listen to me," which is an evaluation, we could say, "In our last 3 conversations, you looked at your phone while I was talking." This specific observation is less likely to provoke defensiveness and more likely to lead to a productive conversation.
And it's not just about avoiding defensiveness. It's about fostering empathy and understanding. When we make clear observations, we create space for the other person to understand our perspective without feeling attacked. This can lead to more meaningful and compassionate interactions.
Exactly. Another aspect Rosenberg touches on is how our cultural conditioning influences our tendency to evaluate. We are often taught to see the world in terms of right and wrong, good and bad. This binary thinking is deeply ingrained in us and can be challenging to overcome. But by practicing observation without evaluation, we can start to shift this mindset.
It's a significant shift. Rosenberg suggests that observing without evaluating is the highest form of human intelligence. This idea resonates with me because it aligns with being present and mindful in our interactions. It's about seeing things as they are, without the filter of our judgments.
That's beautifully put, Alex. To wrap up our discussion on Chapter 3, The key takeaway is the importance of separating observations from evaluations. This practice helps us communicate more clearly and compassionately. It reduces defensiveness and opens the door to deeper understanding and connection.
Well said, Darowan. I encourage our listeners to start noticing when they mix observations with evaluations in their own communication. It's a challenging but rewarding practice. Thank you all for joining us today. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll explore Chapter 4 of Rosenberg's Nonviolent Communication, A Language of Life. Until next time, keep communicating with compassion.
Thanks, everyone. See you next time.